Wow. Very powerful. Thank you, gentlemen. Can everyone hear me okay? Good morning, welcome, and it's an honor and pleasure to be standing in front of you today. It's a great day to be alive, and this is a great space for each and every one of us to come together and to talk openly about our past, our traumas, and to move forward. So kudos to each and every one of you. You should be very proud, because it takes a lot of courage to walk into a space like this, especially when we know everybody. You know, I grew up in a community with 2,000 people, and a lot of times I was afraid to make face in public spaces, because we all fight a fight no one knows about. And sometimes we think that our experiences are far worse than our neighbors. So a lot of times we tend to hide and be silent. And for a space like this is a great opportunity for each and every one of us to look in the mirror, to see what you can do to be better for yourself. That's first and foremost. When you're not healthy yourself first, how are we supposed to help others? And a lot of times in many of our communities, we look upon our leaders for guidance. But how many of us ask those leaders, how are you doing?
Yep.
Like I said, I'm honored to be here talking with you today. The story I'm going to share with you has a wonderful ending, but it's also a story of pain and loss. I hope some of my stories will offer support to those who need it the most, and know that you are not alone. There is always hope for a better future. Today, I can honestly say I am self-aware, I have focus, I am growing in wisdom on a daily basis, and like I said, I am fulfilled and self-aware. Yes, my life has been hard. I've written about it, and my story is well known. What people perhaps don't know is that I am the man today, not in spite of my hardships, but because of them. I'm not going to share all of my stories. Instead, I'm going to highlight how adversity has made me stronger, and hopefully inspire one of you to embrace your adversity as you become the best version of yourself. We as a community need to choose our destiny. We need to embrace the strength of our culture, of our traditions, and we need to stop the cycle that has plagued our people for many decades. Let me share a story of what strength means to our Indigenous spirit. This story is of a gentleman from Alberta, Nunavut, which is a remote community close to where I'm from. This gentleman is in his late 60s. Sometimes, or some days, we think that life is way too hard, but only few of us have experienced a life or death situation. This gentleman is a symbol of our strength, a symbol of our resilience. This great hunter was lost out on the land for 10 days. Imagine being by yourself for 10 days. How do you keep yourself sane? Everybody wrote him off, thinking that he was eaten by a polar bear, a wolverine, or a pack of wolves. But he survived. People asked, how did you do it? And his response was, I thank God for my life experiences, not being afraid and just being calm. When we channel what he did in those 10 days, we will break this cycle. For far too long, we have been victims. How do we change this negative energy into hope for a better future? What words can I challenge the victim mindset? How long will we continue to be victims? It may not be a popular statement, but life is all about choices. And it's time for each and every one of us to step up. If it's too easy, you're not working hard enough. If it's too easy to look away, to turn your back, you're not working hard enough. The time for a better future is now. And this is our opportunity. As a community, as a society, we remain stuck, and this must stop. We must be the generation that breaks the cycle. At a very young age, I learned to adapt to the toxic environment that I grew up in. It was normal to me growing up, thinking that I was never good enough, thinking that I was always in the way. Ever since I could remember, probably by the age of 5 years old and on, I never knew what to expect when I came home on a Friday evening to my front doors. What am I going to see behind these doors? It amazes me, looking back now, how damaging words can be. No other pain can overshadow the mental pain I've endured throughout my life. In my darkest times, I allowed those 15 traumatic days in a year to overshadow the other 350 great days I had with my family. Far too many of us do that. We dwell on the past, and we dwell on and let those traumas control us. But only after I embrace my past, I've allowed myself to remember the beautiful times I've had growing up in my home. One of those fond memories is coming home after school on Wednesday and seeing the skidoo and sled beside our house. Without words, I knew that we were going out on the land on Friday after school. Until I entered rehab in 2010, my lived experiences were those 15 traumatic days. I was incapable of seeing the goodness that surrounded me for the other 350 days. It is the work that I've done since that has allowed me to move forward as a caring member of our community, as a father and a husband. If you are Indigenous, the story of my 15 traumatic days is not new to you. Many of you have experienced far more days than I have. And all of us have had to deal with the topic of suicide. My brother Terrence, the warrior, he was my mentor, my coach, my best friend, and my hero. You probably already know this story. It was late August 2002. I was getting ready for another hockey season, playing for the Brandon Wheat Kings. As a 19-year-old kid,
right there.
It was pretty tough to digest the whole situation immediately. My brother and I were out partying with some of our friends. He was going to be flying out to Norfolk, Virginia in a couple days. Just another night for the Tootoo brothers was our last night. I tried to talk to him into staying after he dropped my girlfriend and I off at her house, but he wanted to drive back to our billet's house. I found out later that the Brandon police had pulled over Terrence and charged him with a DUI. He knew deep down inside that it wasn't the right thing to do. He blew over the limit, but instead of taking him to the cop shop, the Brandon police took him to my billet's house. They knew who he was. Everyone knew who the Tootoo brothers were. The next day, we found my brother Terrence in a field close to my billet's house. My brother left me a note, and that note said, "Jor, go all the way. Take care of the family. You are the man, Terrence." As time went on, I came to the realization that there was a lot more to my brother's suicide than our actions that evening. I started to realize that it wasn't all the Brandon police's fault. To stop thinking that it wouldn't have happened if they had just taken him back to the cop shop. When I learned I lost my brother, my initial reaction was shock. I went from shock to denial. My denial turned to anger and blame. In the months and years that followed my brother's death, I tried to block out those bad memories with booze and the game of hockey. For 8 years, I was caught in this anger and blame, and my life had spiraled out of control. Booze was everything to me. My addiction had taken over my life. I had numerously been called into my coach's office for my off-ice antics. To be honest, I hated to be alone with my thoughts, and I would do whatever I could to keep the party going. I was an NHL player, and there was always someone willing to raise a glass with me. More and more, I was a distraction to my teammates and a harm to myself. I owe much of where I am today to a man who had the courage to speak truth to me, to help me confront my demons, and to give me no choice but to seek help. That man was my coach, Mr. Barry Trotz. I share this story because many of you have been there. Many of you will see yourself in this time. But I don't know if you have a Barry Trotz in your life. Someone who will let you know, hey, it's time. What should have been the hardest decision of my life was actually the easiest and best decision I had ever made. Blame, resentment, self-pity are all hallmarks of an addict. For so long, I blamed my father for the challenges I had in my life. Today, I have a different perspective on that. I've written lots about my home life traumas, but I've not told you about the gifts it has given me. In my books, I share how my dad was peaceful and calm out on the land, and the animal he became at home. I could never understand this. It led to anger and resentment. I often used it as an excuse for my alcoholism. Today, this has changed. A few years back, when the Kamloops residential schools graves came to light, I was out fishing with a buddy of mine. We had been fishing for 3 days. Yes, I was exhausted, but I felt great deep down inside. We drove into Campbell River. I went to a local Boston Pizza. There was the playoffs were on. There was a hockey game that night. So we decided to go in and watch the hockey game. My buddy pulled up a story on his phone and he handed it over to me. The story read this: if we looked up at them, they would wash our mouths with soap. If we misbehaved, they would wash our skin with soap. There was an old lady sitting a few booths down from me. The Stanley Cup playoffs were on, and the lady was just cheering like crazy as the Montreal Canadiens scored a goal. I looked at her, and all I could see is my father, Barney. My mind was racing, replaying the moments. My father was raging and wondering, did my dad have experiences like this? My buddy asked me, what are you thinking about, Jordin? And I told him, I said, my father, Barney, this explains a lot. I may never know if my dad was a victim of residential schools, but I now accept that he has trauma in his youth. I accept that he did, and he continues to do the best he can for our family, rather than dwell on his shortcomings. I choose to focus on the gifts that he has given me. My father, Barney, out on the land, he is calm, he is content in his own skin, and he is in a safe place. It is the same land that has allowed me to move forward in my recovery. Like I said, on the land, my dad is patient, my dad is calm, my dad is wise. It took me many years to shift from being a victim of my father's rage. Today, I am victorious with the love of the land, his gift to me. How we view our past lets us decide whether we will be victims or victors. Let me share with you how my perspective has changed. When I was 12 years old, I would wake up at 6 in the morning and go and shovel snow. This was my job for 4 years. I would get up, no breakfast, put on my parka, go outside in minus 40, minus 50, skidoo wouldn't start, go back inside, grab a bucket of hot water, pour it on the carburetor, and off I would go. I had 7 government buildings to shovel. Yes, it was pitch black. I was afraid. The wind was howling. And I was in the heart of polar bear country. I really didn't know what was around the next corner. I would get through the first building, onto the second, and by then my fingers would be frozen, my toes would be frozen. But I knew I had to get it done. It was my job. Also, I couldn't be late for school. I would get home by 8:20 and leave for school by 8:30, hungry and exhausted. In my addiction, I would look back on those times with anger and resentment. I would be mad at my father and mother for pushing me into a space of fear. I allowed myself to be a victim. As I reflect now on my life, I look back and I see something very different. With every shovelful that I threw, I became stronger. Every time I approached those buildings, not knowing what wildlife was around the corner, I was learning to overcome fear. I'm sure many of you know the big tough guy, Donald Brashear. Yes, he was big and he was scary, but I'll tell you what, he was nothing compared to a polar bear. I learned to break massive tasks into smaller pieces to deal with my problems, one shovelful at a time. Tackling major problems became a game to me. When I look back now, what could once be viewed as trauma of my childhood, I now see a gift that gave me strength. How many of us in this room have experiences like this growing up? How many of us are looking at those experiences and feeling victim? My parents gave me a gift. My strength today comes from those government steps. I am truly grateful for those experiences my parents gave me. The love, I love them more today than I have ever had. Yes, on the ice, I had it all. I was free. I had the strength of that 12-year-old boy who had been heaving snow for the better part of his life. But off the ice, it was a different story. I lived in a world of chaos, and I really didn't know of any other place to turn to. Somehow, my grade 8 teacher, Miss Simone Clark, understood the challenges that I was going through. With patience and kindness, she would watch over me. She opened her home to me, and she gave me a safe place. I believe that Simone allowed me to see myself more than just a hockey player. And when I entered rehab, I thought of her often and the gifts that she had given me. Everyone in this room has someone who cares about them. Everyone in this room has a Simone Clark. How many of us will embrace the gift of their kindness and the message they bring us? Yes, each and every one of us faces a fork in the road. When I think of our Indigenous people, I picture the Inuit Games. I picture the joy, the laughter, the competition, and most importantly, the competitors pushing the boundaries of their mental toughness. This is who we are. The Inuit Games and Northern Games are demonstrations of the Northern spirit. This spirit is in each and every one of us, and it is what I call mind over matter. Each of us has choices to make. I choose sobriety. I choose my family. I choose the legacy we will leave behind. Together, my wife and I, Jen, created this statement, which guides our lives together. Tootoos dig through the trenches. We persevere. We are not scared to fail. And we know it's never too late to change. We live with purpose to enable our children, our grandchildren, to be fulfilled, to be independent, kind, humble, generous, selfless, and educated. We understand and respect our family roots, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Tootoos do not judge. We have an open and honest conversation in pursuit of truth. We respect the land and appreciate the great outdoors. We provide a beacon of hope for Indigenous youth through education and engagement. The cycle stops with us. In closing, I still have dreams about my brother, dreams about us being together. In these dreams, we were out on the Hudson Bay boating, and he is on the boat, and he would drop me off on the land. And he'd say, "Bro, I'm gonna go check the nets, I'll be right back." And I would wake up from my dream as he's floating away. Other times, we'd be on our quads, going down a trail, and we come to a fork in the road, and he'd say, "Bro, go this way, I'm gonna go this way, I'll meet you at the end." And off we go, and I would wake up. Or we'd be up in the sky, jumping out of a plane, skydiving together, holding hands. And as we were about to pull our chutes, he would let go of my hand, and I would wake up. The common theme is, "Jordin, you're gonna be okay. Go on your own. I'm gonna go this way." These dreams give me peace, knowing that his spirit is still with me. I feel him the most when I'm holding a fishing rod or I'm sitting in a tree stand, visualizing him right next to me. I have found peace. My hope and wish is that you can find the same. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Let's give him another round of applause.